Welcome everyone. Really great to see you here today. I'm Domini. I'm the founder of Tried and Supplied, which is a sustainable procurement platform. And as part of that, we deal a lot with data. It's a very data intensive thing, looking at sustainability and also procurement. One of the things we've noticed is that getting data to the right place at the right time makes a really big difference. So today we have a panel here of some wonderful experts, not just sustainable procurement focus, but with a focus looking across the whole business at where data can be used in hospitality, because I feel like it's a massively untapped resource at a time when resources are scarce. I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses to make much more of this incredible resource. So by way of an introduction, I'm just going to ask each of the speakers to describe who they are, what data it is that they typically work with, and how they've been able to monetize it so far. So Anjali, do you want to start?
Hello everyone, I'm Anjali Vyas. So I basically wear two hats. So I'm a chef by day, but also I work in food policy and brand strategy as well. So essentially I straddle two types of data. One is very qualitative focused, and it looks at people, planet and impact. And the other one is largely quantitative focused, and it looks at profit and GP. So essentially, we're looking at qualitative and quantitative, and whether it's revenue generating or impact related data.
Perfect. Thank you. Vic?
Hi, I'm Vic. I run DataHawks. I monetize your customer database. So all of that data that's sort of sitting in your CRM, I get in, I analyze it, and I identify and profile your key customer groups. And then from there, me and my team send emails out that are targeted to drive frequency, recency, and spend. So we're the people that turn your data into hard cash.
Perfect.
Hi everyone, my name's Rahan. I'm from the Pan-Asian restaurant Indiang, and I'm also the Asian expert chef for Rationale. One of the things I closely look at when it comes to data is looking at how we can reduce energy consumption on the cooking methods that we use. We all know energy is obviously of a high cost right now, and one of the things that we look at carefully is energy reporting from our actual cooking systems. The other part of the data analysis is from our customer database, which allows us to see how their eating habits are changing, and also what are they moving towards in terms of choices throughout the year.
Thank you. A great introduction from all of you. So thinking about the commercial opportunity, from each of those different areas, what would you say has been the biggest commercial opportunity that you've been able to unlock for the businesses that you've worked with? And equally, what's perhaps the most frequent one that you find is an opportunity that's often untapped with those businesses as well? So what's the biggest and what's the most frequent, would you say? Anjali?
Same again?
Yeah.
So like I said, because I work in two different data fields, I think if I work with my food policy and food systems hat on first, one of the things that we recognize is that data isn't as democratic, and access to data is not always there, because when you're working with funded organizations, they don't have the cash in hand to invest in systems or people to be able to extrapolate data and evaluate it and compress it and give results back. So one of the biggest, I wouldn't say it's a commercial learning, but I think in terms of impact, is building a toolkit that really allows food system stakeholders that don't have data capacity within their business to be able to understand how their business performs against what they're trying to achieve from a policy, people, and an impact perspective, and giving people access to that data, which they wouldn't really have. On the commercial side of it, I think it's very simple. Really, it's about menu engineering from a product development hat and helping businesses to understand how they can build win-win scenarios. So that is basically, as a chef, what I do all the time.
Absolutely. It's so important to get that right. Otherwise, you can end up with some menu items that are actually not profitable on the menu and dragging the whole thing down.
Yeah, well, I think it's we look at profitability, you can look at volume. Sometimes you'll have products that are not profitable at all, but they really drive volume. So you look at those puzzle scenarios and you say, well, why is it my mic switched off. Oh, you
Yeah,
say,
it's fine.
why is it working? I don't really understand because something in my data is telling me there is space for this, but maybe I'm not comfortable. So it's about getting uncomfortable with what the data's telling you as well.
Perfect, thank you. Vic,
Well,
I know you've got a good story on this. So.
Do you know what I have? Because I was just writing a deck on my way here on the tube for a client where we realised that we had generated £6.6 million of incremental revenue in less than 5 months for a leisure brand. And we did that through segmented, personalised and automated emails. And by segmented, I mean, what's the action you're trying to drive? You know, do you want to get one more visit from, you know, a certain group, or do you want to bring people back from the brink of lapse? Personalisation is like, you know, how do we use the information we have about people to make sure we're sending really relevant messaging that's going to, you know, really resonate. And automation, which are kind of the emails that are just going out that you're setting up to automatically trigger. These are the emails that are sort of basically making a business money, you know, while you sleep. And we know that this is incremental because, first of all, we can see very clear segment movement. So we can see people moving from less valuable groups to more valuable groups, and we can see those, you know, higher value groups getting bigger. We're running control groups, so we can see that the impact of an email is a genuine impact because the people that didn't receive the email didn't behave in the same way, they didn't make the same bookings, you know, they didn't redeem the same vouchers. And also kind of that journey to conversion. So if you've got people sitting on your database, how quickly are people converting to a first visit? And when we first started working with this particular brand just under 5 months ago, it was taking 66 days on average to go from sign up to the database to sort of seeing a first visit, you know, in one of their venues. And then because we've put some automations in place, we've managed to reduce that down to 11 days. So, you know, we can see that incremental benefit, and it's, for me, it's just so exciting to be able to see tangible sort of money going into their bank that we can prove is genuinely incremental. And to answer the question around what are people missing, if you're not sending segmented, personalised and sort of automated emails, you're just leaving money on the table, quite frankly. You know, it's the biggest frustration I have, that, you know, you've got a part of data there just waiting to be turned into cash.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that every business needs to be doing.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the questions just off the back of that is are there things that they're missing the opportunity to gather the data? Because a lot of what you just described needs, you know, the data around personalization, like understanding the customer.
Yeah.
Do businesses already have that data that they're not using, or are they missing the opportunity to gather that data?
Yeah, but really missing the opportunity, because a lot of businesses are gathering stuff like, you know, age and gender, but that stuff's becoming really irrelevant. You know, if you sort of stick me in a lineup with 9 other 48-year-old females, we're all going to sort of, you know, have something in common by the nature of the fact that we all identify as female and we're all 48. But apart from that, there's not going to be very much to connect us. So to kind of market to me based on the fact I'm a 48 female is frankly risky. You know, it's vague and it's risky. So I think it's less about kind of gathering those kind of things and postcodes and what's your favourite site and stuff like that, and gathering the mindset and the motivation behind the behaviour, which is that psychographic insight, because then we can kind of understand, well, why is somebody, you know, buying that vegan burger? Is it health and fitness reasons, or is it, you know, sustainability reasons or animal welfare reasons? And when we know that, that's when you can drive, you know, real personalisation. So I think that the trick that's being missed is just ask more, be more curious, you know, find out more and try and uncover the, you know, the why behind the behaviour.
And actually, probably the customers feel a bit more known, and you know, if you're asking them more interesting questions, then, you know, they're going to feel a bit more like you care about them and who they really are. So I think it kind of has an added benefit there as well.
Exactly.
Rehan, on to you. I know you've done a lot of work in your kitchen, so
Certainly have. So I guess there's probably in the audience today, there'll probably be many people from hospitality as well. Unfortunately, what we're looking at the moment is fixed overheads have reached all-time highs, and we're actually trying to find ways and means to reduce that expense, but we're not actually finding out where that pocket is, per se. So where is that pocket and where does it really lie? We've got staff that are fixed in their mechanisms according to, if I could just piggyback off what you said with the menus, that menu engineering actually dictates how much staff you need to be able to deliver that. To create a system that doesn't depend on mass manual labor in a climate where it's just not viably available at the moment means that you have to really recreate the entire process of what you're doing in your kitchen. So for me, using the Rationale iCombi Pro and the iVario Pro, it allows me to actually see the reports of the energy consumption that it's using on each individual item that we're cooking. So I know exactly how much energy it's costing to produce the different items that are being prepared. Now, if I know that, I can then realize that one of my cooking methods is actually too high in energy consumption and it needs to be reduced. So how am I going to do that? There's many ways that you could approach that, but you've really got to go and break it down to look at how many people are actually involved in making that product as well. So for me, we went to look at a traditional Indian kitchen, for example, tandoori oven, just huge amount of gas that we pump through that. Range cookers, Thai cookers, these are all expensive modes of energy that we're using. However, with the iCombi Pro, in the way that we approached this, we looked at speed of time, the amount of prep that is required to deliver that final product to the customer, and what are the times that it's taking overall to produce that. So I'll give you one example. So we were doing a curry-based chicken. It was taking us half an hour to do it. By changing the process on what we were doing rather than on a slow cook at 180 degrees and 60% steam, we changed the process to have the sauce being cooked at one point and the proteins being cooked at one point. The sauce came up really quick, and because we're grilling the proteins, we've reduced the times overall. So that slow cook now, that was taking us half an hour, has now resulted in us getting it down to 10 minutes. So the energy saving costs in that overall allows us to build products that are more profitable, that lead to less downtime for the staff to be able to not have to be in the kitchen as long to produce these things in the prep setup, and you can save money. You're looking at overheads and you're thinking there's no way I'm going to be able to save with these energy prices up here. You've got to go in deeper and look at the micro levels of what you're creating, and it's really dependent on your chefs and the technology that they have in the kitchens. If they haven't got the right equipment, they're not going to be able to save you money. And that's where, as owners, you're going to need to empower them with the right equipment to be able to do that. That's pretty much where I'm coming from on that aspect of things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also when you're thinking about making the investment in the equipment, having the data to be able to know how much it's going to save you
Absolutely.
on the menu that you've got is also going to be really helpful.
Yeah, I think as restaurants, we're looking at how much things are costing us, and it's always changing. We're seeing it with in the news, cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers just shooting up and being out of stock in some cases, and you've got to be quite flexible to be able to change that. And just to piggyback off what you said with emails as well, and making sure that you know when customers are moving into different territories.
Yeah.
That's also important on our back end with our EPOS data, that we're able to access the brackets of what customers are spending. So now I can break down my customer portfolio into those that spend above £50 a head, those customers that spend above £30 a head, and my marketing can then be tailored, like I said, towards those specific groups with specific marketing campaigns that are different to get that revenue and frequency, because people are looking to dine out maybe less frequently than before. Giving them an excuse to come back, we know you spend this amount of money, actually we can tailor an offer towards you that will bring you in more frequently, and I think that's another way that we can interact and build revenues.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions I have is also thinking from an operational standpoint, perhaps Anjali and Rehan, how would you connect all of this data together in terms of like product development and customer acquisition? What would you see the flow looking like? Anjali, do you want to?
That's a good question. I think for me it goes back to my initial point, which is access to skills. So one of the things that we've noticed around data in the last 12 months is HFSS, nutritional labeling, and consumer-facing nutritional labeling. That is a whole new data set of skills that's come in, and that data has to be you need a skilled person to do that. So when you're at 1 to 2 stores or 1 to 3, but then when you're going from 3 to 20 or 20 to 100 or to 200, that investment is probably higher. But access to funds is probably higher as well. So the framework and the process flow that you build is based on your access to income, really, and your profitability of the business. But in terms of understanding the full wheel, I think on a very, very basic level, it's really understanding your ecosystem and having your GP and having your volume and your actual cash in bank, understanding those numbers and having those numbers available, not just for the chef, it's for the chefs, it's for the business owners, but it's also for the team, I think is a really critical part of it, because we're having a staffing crisis at the moment, and it's going to get worse in the next 2-3 months. And I think the more skills and the more training that you give away for free to your staff and more you empower them is going to retain them. I know there's a session on this later, but I think that's a critical part in a process flow, because what you're doing is you're taking the burden off of yourself. Your staff are working within a system 24/7, so they might spot things that you won't. So building a full force system is having that data available. What do you think, Rahan?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Training is something that's very, very important. And I think actually when we're looking at skills, there are different levels of candidates. And how much are you going to be able to impart in them? One of the things I've been able to do is take my skill set and impart that into a machine. So those consistent measures are built into the rationale or the Vario. And that's a drop down and drop and drag system. We speak in the language of the youth. That certainly makes it easier. It also stops errors as well, because if all of the information is in that machine and it is literally to slide in, close the door and drop and drag, there can't be any errors. That product will be cooked the same every time. And one of the things that I've seen as well on the connected cooking app side of things is that if you can actually customize your cooking unit to build new products and new methodologies, but take out all of the, let's say, higher skill levels of cooking, you've now created a kitchen that is enabling more candidates to be available to hire, as opposed to going up to looking for that top skill level that is just not widely available. We'd all love to put a Michelin star chef's head into a machine and let it do all the cooking for you. But certainly that's here now, where we can actually take these methodologies with training to be able to do that. So on the full scope of the wheel, it does require the entire team to be able to deliver that from front to back. But most certainly to provide that consistency is going to be built around your optimized processes. So, and that's only going to come and improve from the data that you have.
So if we were to put a flow together for that, I think what we're both saying as well is that I've shifted away from running my own kitchens to working on a QSR level and running 80 kitchens in the UK and then about 20 globally outside of the UK. But to get the same consistent operation in every single market requires a very, very easy operation, even if you're dealing with a different level of educated chefs. So in Dubai, for example, we have a couple of restaurants there and we deal with chefs in our kitchen. But there is a language barrier there as well, because everybody speaks 4 different languages as opposed to the languages that we speak here. So creating a 1 to 5 operational method across 3 pieces of equipment that anybody moving in and out of that space that can do, I think has been one of the key ways to keep human error down and to keep cost low for retraining purposes as well.
So do you think it's important to have the same types of equipment across the board, or?
I think so.
Especially if the languages can just be clicked and changed and away they go.
I think the same types of equipment do work, but I think, for example, if you're dealing with higher skilled staff, so I have staff in Dubai that are all chefs and they've come from Pakistan and India, so they all know how to run a tandoor. Yes. So when you're baking out a tandoor, you've got a team who's baked out 1 million tandoors in their career, so they're going, there's no problem here. So they can make flatbreads in a tandoor all day long and they're comfortable with that. And I'm comfortable with them understanding the consistency to deliver that. And everybody in the kitchen is trained to deliver that as well. And I think that we talked about this last week, is your front of house and back of house there is an opportunity to take your kitchen training into the front of house team. Your front of house don't need to just have front of house skills. Bring them into the back of house, because that is also what supports you when you have attrition issues within the business.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, I think if the front of house and the back of house can be interchangeable, which is what we probably see in more of the chain stores, it's going to be a massive asset to you, even as an independent business, that you can toggle and change. And I think that comes around by accessing the data that we have to be able to find out, actually, how can we make this simplified to the point that anyone can do it? And I think that's where it really comes from. Yeah.
Okay, so that leads nicely on to the next question I have. Vic, perhaps you can start with this one. So
I hope it's not going to be about cooking.
no, it got nothing to do with that. It's about really, what do you see as the right time and the right place for data? And how critical is that for monetizing? Because Anjali and Rehan have been talking about, who gets to see the data and how. And that is such a critical part, I think, from what I've seen. It's got to be there where you're making the decision. So what are your thoughts on that side?
I suppose kind of having the right data in the right place at the right time from an operational sort of perspective. Whenever we're sort of like considering how we use the data in a database, we're considering how do we exploit it in the short term. And by exploit, I just mean like, how do you turn it into instant sales? How do you make sure you've got the right communications going out to the right people in the right time? But because the CRM is arguably the closest you're going to get to your customers, because it really is sort of capturing every movement, every product, every visit, it means that we can also offer that data outside of the marketing function as well. And a really good example would be that for a brand we've been working with over the last 2 years, we've seen that their customers, or their most valuable customer group, has got younger and younger and younger. Which is typical of quite a lot of businesses actually post-lockdown, but also their sales mix is changing now, and we can see that people aren't buying like the same products as they were before. So we can now use that information and that insight to go back to the brand and go, listen, we're seeing the impact of this in our spend per head. We can see that the sales mix is shifting. We've got enough data and enough insight to be able to come back almost and give you a brief for what these people do want to buy. And so it means that we're feeding through, operationally as well. And I guess that's the thing that builds that like longer term brand development and business resilience as well. So we shouldn't be working in silo where we've got the marketing team over here making the posters, and then we've got the operators over there, working around the clock to look after the customers. We're all trying to do the same thing, and I think that marketers can be generous in sharing that data, sharing that insight, and saying this is what we're seeing. These are the operational changes you could be making, and then I guess you guys sort of picking that up and going, well, how do we do that in the most sort of profitable and efficient way? And that's the link. That's the marketing and ops link.
Yeah, and kind of being able to take the personalisation of the data you've got from the customer to be able to inform your product development for the next year, and make that more honed for the next year, and make your customer experience better off the back of that. So once you start connecting everything together, it really kind of has a multiplier effect on the power of the data that you have.
It totally does, and it's valuable across all the different functions as well. So I won't say which brand just in case they're in the audience, but I was a marketing director a few years ago for a brand, and the way that we did site openings, and this is a massive brand, by the way, these aren't amateurs, this is a massive brand, they would do site selection by kind of going, just got a really good deal on a site in Milton Keynes, do you want it, Vic? And I'd be like, what? Like, what does it look like? What's the footfall look like? And they'd go, well, we don't really know, but we've got a really good deal. And they'd be really pleased with that. And then I'd be desperately trying to backfill the brand into this space, bearing in mind it just wasn't a suitable place. And then surprise, surprise, it doesn't hit its budgets. And then all of a sudden it's a marketing problem. Why isn't the site working there? And I'm like, what? How did I get involved in this?
Yeah.
Like, and it's a tale as old as time. This stuff happens like, on the daily. But what we can do with that marketing data sitting in the CRM is we can go to a brand and say, this is where you should open your next 3 sites. In fact, we've got 2 or 3 brands at the moment where we've said, these are where there are heavy concentrations of people who share exactly the same characteristics as, your most valuable customers, down to the postcode. And, this is where you should be opening. And we're doing that based on the data. So You know, it's feeding brand development, it's feeding product development, it's feeding your new opening strategy. You know, it's all there. The answers are all in that part of data, because it's the closest view and closest account of your customers' behaviors and interests that you're going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
I just want to dovetail off one of the points that Vic made, is that, and I totally get this. There's finger blaming, right? Any organization, you're going to say, well, no, you know, it's their fault, marketing effed up, or product effed up, or operations did this, and everybody's ruined something. And that, but you can't, I think one of the biggest things that we often think when we look at the success of something is we go, well, was it successful? But the truth is, if we think behind that, I don't think every single area of the stakeholders that have been involved in bringing a project to life have the same KPIs. So you can't essentially look at a project's success if your KPIs aren't aligned, and if the KPIs of what every department is trying to reach is communicated within those departments. So that cross-pollination of, well, actually, marketing's trying to reach here, they're trying to open this category up to support operations to set up 5 new locations. So those new locations, we can see that the audience, vegan's very popular in East London, for example. So actually, product development needs to focus on vegan for that market to land those sites. And that holistic conversation and that openness to collaborate is often what's missing inside an organization. So when you review something at the end of it, was it success? That's when you're looking at the data from the wrong perspective, because you're looking at it to measure up to something that wasn't identified before, or data figures that are not, or KPIs that are not specific to that intention of those openings.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that as well, I think you're right around, you know, the gaps that exist in this industry, because it never fails to amaze me that this industry seems to operate in a completely different way to any other industry. And we're always in crisis. So it's like, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not working. And you look at like a business like Netflix or something, it doesn't matter whether you work in finance, whether you work in recruitment, whether you work in marketing, whether you work in systems, you are all pointed towards the same goal. Like you are all, and so you have all got those shared KPIs because you're pointed towards the same goal. And here, because as in this industry, not in this audience, but like in this industry, we tend to silo things down. So nobody really knows what it is they're working on. And then the second something goes wrong, to your point, people are kind of going, that's a marketing problem, that's recruitment, you know, oh, that's ops all over. And you just think, what?
The trade-off that you could possibly have there is, as somebody who wears the brand strategy hat and also wears the chef hat, is ego, because you're going, oh, I was perfect. No, you were wrong. I told you in the beginning. And there is obviously that at play, because you've got marketing and product all essentially think that they own the product. So it's being aligned at the starting phase of going, this is what we're doing together.
Yeah.
I think also that things are changing so fast. And when we're talking about right place, right time, I think there's an element of actually knowing that there has to be a compromise that will have to be made across your entire business, because if your overheads are exceeding where you need them to be, you're going to have to take things out. And ultimately, there are core elements in your business that you do not want to take out because they've been with you since day dot, and you don't want to change it, you don't want to remove it. Let's take an example, like a chicken tikka masala, for example. Would you say any Indian restaurant would take it off their menu? But if it's not bringing you in the revenues, I don't think you have a choice. And I think the actual establishments of what you need to be able to do, and this is where the penny drops for a lot of people, is if the amount of time built into one product is not making you the revenues it did before, and furthermore, you can look forward into the future and see things going up, it's going to deplete further. Are you still providing value for money off that dish that has served you well for 20 years? Maybe not, maybe so, but these are the hard choices you have to make. And as chefs as well, we have to make that very conscious decision. And sometimes it's not one that sits well with us, because I love making this thing, but it's just not working. And that's where you look at the data and actually establish a position of saying, is that actually right for the business or not? So yeah, right place, right time.
I think one of the cases right now, which we've been discussing, is plant-based products. And we've been saying, well, I was a vegan for 5 years, and that's when plant-based, but I grew up as a vegetarian, so it was not it was an easy transition apart from the obsession with cheese, but which has come back. But that's a different story.
Cheese is so good.
But the thing is, you know, when there's a lot of noise in the media and and in the supermarkets, and you're seeing trends popping up, you're seeing brands popping up left, right, and center, and you're also seeing plant-based products becoming more accessible in a better nutritional profiling. An organization, so I work with Chaiwala, and you know, we've thought recently, well, actually, maybe plant-based is for our audience. Plant-based is for our audience, but is alternative protein for our audience? Because is our audience who culturally has so far been very South Asian, and that's been a lot to do with our franchising locations, are they going to be okay with a plant-based protein kebab compared to a traditional, you know, vegetable smushed up kebab? What is it that they're going to want? And I think we could make the assumption that customers wouldn't be interested, but it's also the feed into the data to say, well, actually, let's do an analysis of 30 locations in different areas where we know that some are definitely interested and some may not be, and some we just have no idea, to really take the risk and to gather that data back. Because it may also be that when our data came back, we did a Veganuary campaign, and when our data came back, we found that Leicester, out of all places, was very, very fascinated with that product. That's where it did really, really well, whereas other markets where we thought that would do really well didn't do well at all, because the audience there, the footfall there in that location, they weren't expecting that from us. So I think it's about being curious with the product that you take, and then also going, well, actually, no, we're fine the way we are.
Yes.
Do you know what? I think this is another really kind of good like crossover between marketing and ops. So I've been veggie all my life, and I am the veto eater. You know, if I can't find something on that menu, none of us are coming, right? And it's like, how do you balance vegetarian food being maybe 1% of your menu mix with the fact that if you haven't got somewhere on there, you're not just losing me, you're losing my whole crew, you know? And that's, you know, even more so now with things like plant-based and dairy-free and all of that sort of stuff. And it's hard, isn't it? Because you're trying to balance that thing of, well, this has got a really small, you know, share of the mix, it's operationally complex, you know, we've got to keep this on and look at all that. But equally, I think I read a thing about, might be Sainsbury's, that they will look at like really random things in your basket. So if I buy Diet Coke, I always buy caffeine-free Diet Coke for some reason. And they know that that's one of those things that if they didn't sell it, I might go elsewhere because I always buy that thing.
Yes.
And so it becomes the veto product. They probably don't sell much caffeine-free Diet Coke because I only have 48-year-olds drink it, I think. But they know that in not selling it, you're not just losing the Coke, you know, sale, you're losing the rest of the basket as well. And it's such a fascinating kind of problem for us to have to solve, both operationally and
that's the element of compromise that we picked up on earlier. It's that when you're looking at these decisions, these core decisions for your businesses, you're really going to be in a position where you've got to make a call.
Yeah.
And that call has to come from data, because you really have to know what you're about to do is going to work or have the highest percentage chance to work. And unless you're doing that analysis and product testing with your clients and your customers, you're not going to know. So there is an element of extra work that needs to go in now more so than ever. And I think it's all well and good that as chefs we say, oh, we're going to tie this menu down, but there still needs to be a decent amount of variety without pushing you into boundaries. And sometimes it's the illusion of variety. So all of our sauces in the restaurant are plant-based at source. And even our naan breads are plant-based as well. So what we can do is actually spread out into that wider range of market, not get vetoed by Vic, and also be able to get to the point where the food itself is great for you, and at the same time, we're looking at making sure that anyone who's coming in can find and facilitate a good variety for them. But actually on the menu, if you looked at it and broke it down, there's actually not a lot there. And that's something that takes careful calculation, but only with the use of data we're able to do that.
I'm going to open up to questions in just a second, but I wanted to talk a little bit about challenges before we wrap up. You mentioned already ego can get in the way of some things. but it's also there's an element of there's so much data, and how do we prioritize what we look at, and there might be other obstacles with it, operationally, as to that are preventing people from actually making the most of these data. So, Anjali, do you want to just provide your perspective on that, and then we'll wrap up. You can each offer your perspective as well, and then we'll wrap up for questions.
Yeah, so I think just to take it back to where we started the conversation, is that, I think initially setting out what your KPIs are to say, well, actually, this is the data I have in front of me, be a combination of qualitative data and quantitative data. So what are people telling you, and what is your data telling you, and what are your people within your organization telling you? And then you need to understand what it is itself, your KPIs, against the insights you're trying to find out. I think when you aren't specific with what you're trying to find out, then you can get lost in your data. But for me, as a process, if I do a really simple category evaluation, I am breaking every single item down by sale, by month, by volume, by actuals, to really understand my fluctuations, and then breaking down what's atrocious, what's okay, what's possible, and what's really good. And being that aggressive with yourself, I think, is important. So you take your emotion out of it, because as soon as you're emotional about the data, then the data's lost for you. But then layering on top of that is also to say, well, if it's the 80-20 rule for me, is that this is what, in my head, the data is telling me this much, that's going to be 80%. But I've got 20% of questioning, of going, what is it that I don't know from this data? What would I like to find out more? And where are the curious points? And I think they're the critical points where you can find out from your business. But that's when you have to take those points and connect with different parts of the business, connect with the people operating your restaurants, connect with marketing, connect with customers.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, Vic, you want to share?
Do you know what I was thinking about what you said earlier on about, egos, because I think one of the big challenges from a marketing perspective is defensiveness. So as an industry, we're probably the only industry that doesn't put marketing front and center. We're incredibly operationally led. Most other industries consider marketing to be a huge investment. We tend to consider it to be an awful expense. It's just got a very different perception. And I think there's an element of defensiveness, because so I run a marketing WhatsApp group for hospitality marketers. It's got 400 members if anybody wants to join. And a lot of people were talking, as we kind of start to come through the other side of COVID, about order and payouts. And the conversation was just constantly around, customers don't want this isn't what they want. No, customers don't want. And that's ludicrous, because surely the best possible experience for a customer is to give them the choice of how they order. That they don't have to wait for a waiter to come by. They don't have to go to the bar, whatever it is. They've got the option to sit and order in their own time, under their own steam. And when I kind of dig into it a little bit, I don't think it was that people were like genuinely thinking we're putting our customers first. I think that there was a fear of thinking, well, if I don't make the menus, then what is it I do? How is it that I contribute to this? And you've got, with marketing, you've got to have like really tangible things. If you can't see a poster or you can't see a menu in your hand, everybody's going, what is it that marketing does again? Like, where are they? If they haven't got their pencils out, what are they doing? And I think we've just got to move past that and go, actually, the opportunity would have been in that case to go, let's really pioneer and push for order and pay to remain in the businesses. Let's realise that it gives an extra layer of choice for our customers, for instance. Let's grab all the incredible proof of presence data that stuff captures, and then let's do much more smart, personalised marketing that's going to be even better and is going to result in tangible, and measurable incremental sales. But we're so caught up with what will we do if we're not making the posters, that we've kind of missed a whole opportunity. So I think just letting that go a little bit.
Just really quickly, because I know we're short of time. Measurables. If you can't measure what's in your business, it's going to be very difficult for you to save anything anywhere. So if you can't measure the energy consumptions of your appliances, if you can't measure the times within your business for service and what that takes, being able to measure in your business is now more important than ever. And I think that's just the final point that I would like to make. Make sure you can measure your things in your business more so now than ever before. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing why you're measuring them, to Anjali's point, it was really helpful. So you're gathering the useful information rather than less useful information. Okay, good point to end. Have we got any questions in the room? Anyone want to ask a question?
We were that thorough.
Yeah.
They're speechless.
Well,
all of
everyone's
them.
tired after 3 days of listening, most likely.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, like, for everyone in the audience, there may have been some items and different nuggets that you'll take from all of us. And whatever that is to you personally in your journey, action it. Don't wait. Really, it's not the time to wait right now. It's really time to get in it, at it. And basically, as soon as you leave here, you should have a plan of action if you don't have one already. I think LinkedIn is a great place to connect with people.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful place to start. Because you might not know where to start. And I think that's a real tough spot for some businesses of where to go next. So I think if you can get to that stage where you are pursuing avenues, you will find the answer eventually. It will come.
Yeah.
And just to add to Rehan's point is that the thing is there is no right and wrong. Like, data is a hard beast to understand, and because it's constantly changing, and the external impact factors within our industry are so hard and fast that one day you're fighting no cucumbers in the aisle, the next day it's tomato, the next day it's labor. So you're going, wait, what am I thinking about? What am I engineering? But the fact is, if you can remain curious and go, I'm going to keep asking these questions and get other people in the organization to also think, that process is never lost, because it might not help you today, but 2-3 weeks down the line, you've enabled somebody else's thinking to go, oh, I had an idea, they'll come back to you. And I usually find they're the golden moments, because you put something into action.
It's steadying the baseline, because that baseline right now is doing all this. And to hold that steady, it is about always, I mean, it's probably a daily basis in your field as well, just looking at what's changing daily. It's so fast right now, to keep up with it is a task just in itself.
Yeah.
But if you can spot those pockets, you can certainly make those changes that will be needed at the right time and the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of from a sustainability perspective as well, there's an element of both the kind of the sales opportunity and the risk if you don't have the sustainability data to match it, that you lose out on opportunities. But also there's increasingly a kind of risk element of having to manage the data and making sure that you do have that data and it's accurate as well. And that's a whole kind of raft of data that most hospitality businesses haven't had to even think about before. It's relatively new. I mean, we've had allergens for a while, so nutrition and calories is another data point that's now coming in, and sustainability data is only going to become more and more critical to business reporting and part of if you've got corporate sales as well as a caterer, that's now becoming part of the selection criteria. So the amount of data that businesses are having to deal with now is much larger. But it's also incredibly valuable if you can tap into it right.
But I also think if you want to see a live example of it, the rationale stand is literally up here. It's here. You might as well go have a look.
Rationale? You mentioned it.
I don't. But you can go and have a look at it. But it's certainly changed my business completely. You can actually look at energy consumption live.
Yeah, it's true.
If you've got an interest in those parts that I did talk about, then whilst you're here, you might as well make advantage of it. Yeah, I thought I'd better mention that as well.
Perfect. Well, I think we're now at time. So if anyone does want to ask questions, you can come and talk to us afterwards. If you're feeling too nervous about asking one now, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.